Hey everyone, it's no secret that the majority of our internet usage is at the risk of getting hacked, be it via unsafe messaging applications or misconfigured operating systems. To counteract this void of digital security, penetration testing has become the norm when it comes to vulnerability assessment. Parrot Security OS is an operating system that has become a well-known weapon in this fight against hackers. A Linux distribution more catered towards penetration testers specifically, Parrot Security has layers of features that we will be covering in today's lesson. Let's take a look at the topics for this video. We start by learning about what Parrot Security is and why it should be considered as a viable alternative next to Kali Linux for penetration testers. Next, we take a look at the minimum system requirements necessary to obtain optimum performance from an installation of Parrot Security. Moving on, we learn about some unique features that make Parrot stand out among the multiple ethical hacking operating systems available on the market. And finally, we look at the multiple ways that Parrot Security OS can be installed, be it on a single system or for portable media. So let's start out by learning what Parrot Security is. Parrot OS is a Debian-based Linux distribution with an emphasis on security, privacy, and development. It is built on Debian's testing branch and uses a custom hardened Linux kernel while being founded in 2013. Parrot Security contains several hundred tools targeted towards various information security tasks such as penetration testing, security research, computer forensics, and reverse engineering. It has become a multi-platform solution, accessible and freely available to information security professionals and hobbyists. It features a distinct forensics mode that does not mount any of the system hard disks or partitions and has no influence on the host system, making it more stealthy than regular mode. This mode is used on the host system when there is a need for executing forensic procedures. In software development, a rolling release is a paradigm in which software upgrades are rolled out constantly rather than in batches of versions. This ensures that the software is constantly up to date. A rolling release distribution such as Parrot Security OS follows the same concept, providing the most recent Linux kernel and software versions as they become available on the market. With the basic introduction to the operating system out of the way, let us have a look at the bare minimum system requirements necessary to be able to run this operating system. First up, we got a CPU requirement which states that a 1 GHz dual-core CPU is the absolute minimum in order to use Parrot OS. While multiple core systems will provide more optimum performance, a small beginner has been included. A very distinct thing to be noted is that the operating system can be installed on all variants of chipsets, be it 32-bit, 64-bit, and the newly popular ARM portfolio of devices. Unlike Kali Linux, which requires some amount of graphical acceleration needed to display the operating system correctly, Parrot OS has no such requirements and can be used with the leanest of machines. Taking into account the RAM issue, a minimum of 256 MB to 512 MB free RAM provides the optimum usage scenarios. Even when the OS is installed on a hard drive storage media, it should theoretically occupy around 8 GB of information, which may extend up to 16 GB depending on the tools being installed out of the box. When it comes to booting options, we have the option of going with the legacy BIOS settings or with the more modern UEFI settings. These are just some of the requirements for the installation of Parrot Security OS. To understand this process more vividly and to learn how visualization can help install an OS in our existing computer, please follow the link to our Parrot Security installation video linked right above. Let's understand what some of the things that make Parrot Security unique among all the other penetration testing operating systems. Along with all the giant catalog of scripts, Parrot Security has its own custom hardened Linux kernel which has been modified explicitly to provide as much security and resistance to hackers as possible as a first line of defense. The configurations in the operating system act as a second gateway, taking care of malicious requests and dropping them off. This is particularly beneficial since should there be a scenario where the latest Linux kernel is causing some particular issue, the Parrot OS development team will most likely iron it out first before passing it on as an update. If the custom hardened kernel wasn't reasoning enough, Parrot Security developers managed to install more hacking tools and scripts to ensure a smooth transition for the Kali Linux users. All the tools you found in Kali are present in Parrot OS, and then a few extra ones for good measure. This has been achieved while keeping roughly the same size of the installation file between both operating systems. However, it's not all productivity points for Parrot OS. They provide a choice between two different desktop environments: the Mate desktop, which comes pre-installed by default, and KDE. For those unfamiliar with Linux terminology, you can think of desktop environments as the main UI for a Linux system. Being highly modular in nature, one can use Kali Linux or Parrot OS while adding another desktop environment which they find appealing. While Kali has only a single option, Parrot OS has managed to provide two optimized builds with Mate Desktop and KDE Desktop ready-made on their website. One of the primary advantages of Parrot OS over Kali is that it's relatively lightweight. This implies that it takes significantly less disk space and computing power to function properly, with as little as 320 MB of RAM required. In reality, Parrot OS is also designed to operate successfully off a USB stick, but Kali Linux does not work well from a USB stick and is generally installed in a virtual machine. Parrot OS can be seen as more of a niche distribution if you are searching for something lighter than Kali Linux. Now that we understand all about the operating system, let us have a look at some of the ways we can move forward with the installation. The first way to use Parrot Security is by launching the distribution in live USB mode. This can be achieved by downloading the installer image file or the ISO file from the Parrot Security website and flashing it to a USB drive with capacity of at least 8 GB. Some people do not need to save these data permanently, and a live USB is the perfect solution for such cases. After the ISO image is flashed, the thumb drive can be used to boot a fully working installation of the operating system, with the caveat that any changes made to the OS in this mode are not written permanently. Some cases allow persistent storage in live USBs, but those require further configuration than normal situations. But what if the user wants to store data permanently in the installed OS? The best and the most reliable way to ensure this is the full-fledged hard disk installation. This will ensure the complete usage of the system's hardware capabilities and will take into account the updates and configurations being made into the OS on a driver level. This method is supposed to override any pre-existing operating system which is installed on the hard disk, be it Windows or any other variety of Linux. The next alternative route for installing Parrot Security would be to use virtualization software such as VMware or VirtualBox. The software will be installed as a separate application on an already existing OS, and Parrot Security can be run as an operating system in the same system as a window. The hardware requirements will be completely customizable, starting with the allotted RAM to the virtual hard disk capacity. The usage of both a host machine and a guest operating system like Parrot OS allows users a safe environment to learn while not putting the systems at risk. If you want to learn more about how we can go forward with this method, we have a dedicated video where Parrot OS is being installed on a VMware while running a Windows 10 operating system. You can find the link in the description box to get started with your very own virtual machine instance. The final way to install Parrot Security is by using a dual boot system. To put it in simple words, the Parrot OS will not be overwriting any pre-installed operating system on a machine, but will be installed alongside it. When a computer boots up, the user will get a choice to boot into either of the operating system. Many people prefer to keep both of Windows and Parrot Security installed, so if the distribution of work and recreational activities is also allotted effectively. It also gives users a safety valve should their custom Linux installation runs into bugs that cannot be fixed from within the OS. Hope you learned something new today. If you have any questions regarding this topic, feel free to ask your queries in the comment section below, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for watching.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.